Okay, I'm going to show you an easy way to install this rolled up PEX tubing in an attic. I'm not a plumber, but I believe in having as few of connections as possible. And after searching the internet and talking to different ones, I found that no one could give me the advice I was looking for, and that was how to uncoil PEX rolls. The only advice I could get was to buy short, straight lengths or buy a real expensive tool to straighten out the PEX. For a one-time job and do it yourself, I thought there ought to be a better way. So what I done first was make the roll bigger by spreading it out in my two-car garage and weighting it down with cases of water that I already had. And I let it set overnight, and any kind of weight will work as long as it's heavy enough to hold the pipe in place as you roll it out, and yet not too heavy to crush it. Then I go to the attic and install vinyl covered clamps on every fourth ceiling joist, and I make sure I have one close to each end where the PEX will be connected to the 3/4 copper pipe. And this is the vinyl coated clamp that I use. It's about 1.25 inches, maybe 1.5 inches in diameter, and I used a 1/4 inch by 3/4 hex sheet metal screw to fasten it down. And you could use a conduit clamp. It could be any size, whatever would fit good for you. But that's what I use to anchor it down, and I put those on every fourth joist, so I could run my pipe and kind of keep it straight. The next morning, I took one end of the PEX and started up the ladder to the attic, while my wife was unrolling the PEX and feeding it to me. I start by feeding it through the closest clamp to get to, and since I've got to go back the other way from the first clamp that I start with, I run it through the far end far enough so I can come back and pull it through my clamps going back the other direction. I'm replacing galvanized pipe that was connected to copper, so I only needed 50 feet of PEX. And this is what I used. It's called Shark Bite. It's if I can get it where you can read it. It's 3/4 tubing. And then I had two of these female sweat adapters. I bought 3, so I had one extra left over. This is the clamp that I use to clamp the PEX tubing to the connector. And I bought this tool. It's a crimp tool to crimp the clamp onto crimp the tubing onto the connector. This is a tool here that I bought it new to cut the PEX tubing with. And I got this 3/4 tubing cutter. You can buy these, there's a lot of different varieties of these on the market, but I was working in close quarters, so this one worked out real good for me. And then I let the hardware man talk me into buying this. It's called Just for Copper, and sets up. You put it on your pipe on the inside and outside. Just make a bead around it and then twist it 360, and it's stuck. So you got to have it where you want it when you do that. And it takes about 7 minutes for it to set up to where you can turn your water back on, put the pressure on it. And they give you a piece of 60 grit emery cloth, and that's to clean the copper with and to cut grooves in it so you'll get a good bond on it. Now I bought all of this for a whole lot less than $100, and ended up doing the job myself. I really didn't want to do this because I'm not a plumber, but seemed like in our area the plumbers they can do a couple of jobs a year and then take off the rest of the time. They advertise that they want to work, but I waited almost a year and called several different plumbers, and they were either going to call me back or they'd be out the next week, or I heard one story and then another, and I've never had one plumber to take a look at it. So I was getting rust in the lines because I had galvanized pipe up there, so I had to do something. I finally decided to do it myself, and I've been told from talking to some people that were lucky enough to get plumbers to do some work that I probably saved myself $600 or $700. So hang on a minute, we'll go up in the attic and I'll show you what I've done. Thanks. Okay, I'm up in the attic now, and I'm right where I come up into the attic from the ladder. This is the first clamp that I ran, which is right here close, and I started here and ran it all the way back to the back, putting clamps every fourth joist. And as my wife fed the line to me, I ran it through and ran it all the way through on the far end back there, and left about 3 or 4 feet on this end to where I could come back and pull it through and go back to the back here about 15 feet where I made my other connection. But what you see here is 2 hot water lines, and they made a loop, and what they did was come out of the drain on the hot water heater and run one line back to the first bathroom at the back there and hook into the copper line, and then they came off of that line and made a loop and came back and ran into the hot water line at the hot water heater, and never could get anyone to tell me what had happened, because when I changed hot water heaters I had that line coming off of the drain going into the wall and didn't know what it was for, so I did away with it and plugged that line off. But had plumbers tell me, well, I had to have a pump, but that wasn't the case. Somehow the pressure, I guess, from the hot water would force hot water from the drain down to the bathroom, and it would just circulate. So it would give me hot water at the back a lot faster than what it does now with this single line. And I've still got to cut these this galvanized off. And the reason I changed this out, we were getting rust in our water, so it was plugging up the faucets and things. So I had to do something, and couldn't get a plumber out here, so I finally ended up having to do it myself. But it worked out pretty good. So I hope this helps you in your plumbing, and thanks a lot for watching.